The Oracle and the Serpent Throne Part 1. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Broke the Moon. The moon was wrong. Ilyara knew at the moment she opened her eyes in the Tower of Silence, where no one was meant to dream, where the night sky was sacred and still. But tonight, the stars whispered. The moons had moved, and the vision came like fire behind her eyes. She gasped, arching off the cold marble floor as a searing light poured through her mind. A throne made of obsidian and bone. A boy with flame for blood. 2 rivers, one of stars, one of ash, meeting in war. And a single name carved across the sky. Kassai. Then darkness. And silence again. When she awoke, the other oracles were gone. Only the high star priest remained, standing with his hands folded behind his back, staring at the great sphere above the dais, where the moons were charted in polished silver and onyx. Ilyara, he said without turning. You have seen something forbidden. She sat up slowly. Her robes were soaked in sweat, her mouth dry as dust. I didn't summon it. It came. And did it speak of the Serpent Throne? Her fingers twitched. That name was cursed, obliterated from temple scrolls, whispered only in outlaw camps along the river. It's only a story, she lied. The priest turned then, and she knew she would not survive the next moonrise if she stayed. That night, Ilyara fled the Temple of 9 Moons. Through the library vault. Past the alabaster crypts. Beneath the copper bells that never rang. She wore a sand-colored cloak and carried nothing but a water skin, a curved knife, and a fragment of her broken moonstone, once a sacred badge, now a shattered oath. She ran into the desert. Past the laws. Past the stars. Into a world where gods no longer watched. By dawn, she collapsed near the dry riverbed, lungs raw, heart hammering. She had never left the temple walls before. She had never disobeyed a vision before. And now? Now she was the last oracle of the sky. And she had lied to the stars. She didn't hear the stranger approach. Didn't feel the shadow until it fell across her sunburned skin. A man stood over her. Tall. Masked. Wrapped in worn desert cloth, the blade at his hip glinting with symbols she didn't recognize until she did. They were forbidden. Serpent glyphs. He tilted his head, voice smooth as fire beneath sand. You don't look like you belong here, moon girl. She didn't answer. Because in that moment, Ilyara saw the same face from her vision, beneath a mask of dust and shadow. Kassai. And so the girl who broke the moon met the boy born to burn it. Together, they would remake the sky. Chapter 2. The Man Without a Name. The desert sun pressed down like a curse. Ilyara blinked up through the heat haze, her breath shallow, her limbs heavy with exhaustion. The sand was sharp beneath her skin, like tiny knives sewn into the earth. She'd fled the temple in the dark, but dawn brought light and danger. And now she was staring up at a man with no name. A stranger, cloaked in sand-torn robes, his face hidden behind a linen mask that covered all but his eyes. They were dark, intelligent, and far too calm for someone finding a dying girl in the middle of nowhere. He crouched. You'll cook alive out here, moon girl. Ilyara reached for her dagger. Her hand trembled. The man chuckled low. If I meant you harm, you wouldn't be waking up at all. She hesitated. Who are you? He stood. No one of importance. She squinted. You're wearing serpent glyphs. That made him pause. The wind shifted. You know what they mean? He asked, suddenly wary. I was trained in forbidden script, she said. Among other sins. The man studied her for a long, still moment. Then extended a water skin. Drink first. Judge later. She drank. Slowly. Carefully. The water was cool and clean, with a faint taste of crushed mint. Too good for a desert rogue. You're not a common traveler, she said. And you're not a common runaway, he replied. So that makes us even. She narrowed her eyes. Why help me? Because anyone running from the temple is either a fool, a heretic, he tilted his head, or someone worth listening to. His voice had a rough elegance to it, like he'd spent years speaking in firelit tents and royal halls alike. Ilyara could hear the cadence beneath the sand. He wasn't who he pretended to be, and he knew she knew. They walked together once she could stand again. Slowly. The wind kicked up small storms, and he handed her a veil for her face. It was worn but soft, dyed with faded color blue, of all things. Sky color. A gift not easily come by in the desert. Do you have a name? She asked as they walked. He didn't answer right away. Then finally, you can call me Kassai. The name struck her like thunder. Kassai. The name from her vision. The boy crowned in flame. She said nothing. But inside, her pulse drummed like a war beat. By dusk, they reached the edge of a canyon carved by ancient floods. Tents rose from below, half collapsed and burned at the edges. An abandoned camp. This was mine, Kassai said quietly. Once, Ilyara glanced at the broken standards and faded banners that littered the rocks. A serpent curling around a flame. You were part of a rebellion, she said. I am the rebellion, he corrected, even if there's no one left to follow it. The fire in his voice didn't match the calm of his movements. That was when she realized he was hiding rage. Deep, old, buried under every breath, just like she was hiding her vision. They made camp in the ruin of a watch tent. Kassai built a small fire using old sagebrush and desert oil. It burned low and blue. The stars emerged above them, slowly, cautiously, as if afraid of what she might see in them. Why did you leave the temple? He asked finally. Ilyara hesitated, then lied. I was tired of being a voice for gods who never answer. Kassai looked at her, eyes shadowed by firelight. You don't believe in them? I don't believe in change dressed as prophecy. His expression shifted just slightly. Then we're not so different. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward. Not empty. Just full. Like something was beginning. She glanced at the glyph on the hilt of his curved blade, partially worn, but unmistakable. You bear the Serpent King's mark, she said. Kassai didn't flinch. But the fire crackled louder. My father died for that mark, he said softly. So did my brothers. I wear it for the ones who couldn't. Ilyara looked at him then, truly looked. And for a moment, she saw it again. The boy from her vision. Crowned in fire. Drenched in blood. Surrounded by stars that screamed. But this boy? He sat by a dying flame, watching her like she was the threat. Like she might break him if she ever got close enough. And deep down, she feared he was right. Because whatever bound them wasn't over. It was only just awakening. Chapter 3. The Lost Heir of Sand. The desert never truly slept. Even when the stars rained and the heat faded, the sand still whispered, moving in slow, ancient currents like a buried ocean. Ilyara couldn't sleep. She sat at the edge of the ruined camp, wrapped in Kassai's spare cloak, watching the blue fire flicker low in the stone-ringed pit. Behind her, Kassai lay motionless, though she knew he wasn't sleeping either. Men like him didn't rest. They waited. She traced her fingers over the shard of moonstone tucked beneath her collarbone. The edges had dulled, but it still pulsed faintly, reacting to her proximity to something or someone. She glanced back at him. Still as stone, but his blade was within reach. Always. And just beyond the firelight, something moved. The sand hissed. She rose to her feet slowly, scanning the ridge. Shadows were shifting, dozens of them. Low, slinking figures circling the perimeter of the ruined camp. Kassai, she whispered, turning. Too late. The first arrow struck the fire pit. The flames exploded in a puff of black smoke, blinding them both. And then the raiders came. Desert marauders, faces veiled in red cloth, eyes painted with ash. They moved like wind demons, curved blades flashing in the starlight. Ilyara ducked instinctively, rolling behind a shattered supply crate as a blade sliced where her neck had been seconds earlier. Kassai was already moving. He rose in a single fluid motion, kicking coals from the dying fire into the nearest attacker's eyes, then spinning with a wide sweep of his blade. The sand flared gold beneath his feet, burned gold, Ilyara realized, not natural. And then the serpents came. Not real ones, but patterns, flame-shaped coils of energy that erupted from the sand with every strike of his sword. They spiraled around him as if summoned, biting into attackers, dragging one screaming into the dunes. Ilyara drew her dagger, fighting defensively as two raiders advanced on her. But one look at Kassai, his face shadowed, blade glowing, surrounded by spirals of fiery serpents, and they hesitated. The older one spat a curse. Serpent spawn. But the younger dropped his blade and ran. The rest followed. Within moments, the fight was over. The fire was gone. The night fell silent again, except for the sound of Kassai's breathing, harsh and deep. His hands trembled slightly, the glow fading from his blade. Ilyara stared. You summoned the serpents, she whispered. He wiped blood from his face with the edge of his sleeve. No, he said quietly. They come when I bleed. She stepped closer, voice low. That's not desert magic. That's royal blood magic. He met her eyes, unflinching. And for the first time, he didn't hide. I am the last living heir of the Serpent Throne. The words hung between them like a sword drawn and held to the throat of destiny. Ilyara felt her knees go weak. This was the face from her vision. The boy who would stand at the edge of two rivers, one of ash, one of stars, and choose which to burn. You should be dead, she whispered. I was supposed to be, he said. They hunted my family, burned our city, rewrote the stars to erase our line. But the fire beneath the earth remembered me, and the serpents still know my name. He turned away, as if ashamed. I don't want a throne, he muttered. I just want to bury the gods that buried me. Ilyara felt the pull inside her again. The moonstone was glowing faintly, reacting to his presence, to his pain, to his truth. Kassai, she said, voice trembling, I saw you before I met you. He glanced back, wary. In a vision, she said. In the Tower of Silence. I saw your name written across the sky. I saw a city burning. I saw you, crowned in fire. He said nothing, just stared at her like she had ripped something open inside him that had never fully healed. And she understood then. He had been waiting to be seen. Not feared, not worshipped, but seen. That night, they did not speak again. But when they sat beside the dying embers, their shoulders brushed. And neither of them moved away. Because something had changed. The stars had shifted, and their names had begun to rise together in the sky. Chapter 4. The Temple Hunts. The moons were aligned again, which meant the chain of heaven was watching. Far above the desert, in the glass observatory of the Temple of Nine Moons, the high star priest stood with hands folded behind his back, gazing through the celestial lens. The moons hung in perfect formation, 3 in ascent, 3 descending, and the largest, known as Mother's Eye, staring directly at the constellation known as the Broken Crown. Below, in the silence of the chamber, a junior priest shivered. My lord, we confirm the oracle's departure. Her flame mark has vanished from the holy registers. She has broken the chain, the high priest said, voice flat. And if she has seen what I think she's seen. He turned from the window. Then she's walking beside the end of all things. He waved his hand. Summon the Seekers. And release the ash-eyed general. Ilyara woke before dawn, her body stiff, her hair tangled from wind and sleep. Kassai was already gone. She found him standing alone on a nearby ridge, arms folded, face toward the rising sun. The air shimmered around him, not with heat, but with something deeper, like presence. Kassai, she said softly. He didn't look at her. I felt them again last night. She stepped beside him. The serpents. He nodded. They come when I sleep now. Coil around my chest. I think they're waking too fast. Ilyara said nothing. Because she'd seen what happened in her vision when his power awakened fully. Cities drowned in ash. The stars bled. The rivers split. They broke camp an hour later, heading east, toward the ruined ziggurat that Kassai swore held remnants of the Serpent King's legacy, proof of his bloodline, of the prophecy he'd been born into, of the gods who tried to erase him. As they walked, Ilyara kept her veil up. The desert was not empty. She could feel the eyes. By midday, they reached the outer edges of the wind-carved pass, a canyon of red stone and spiraling sand where ancient rituals were once performed. There, Kassai stopped suddenly. Don't speak, he whispered. Ilyara froze. Then she saw it. A thin strip of black silk tied around a broken reed, faintly glowing. A temple seeker's ward. They had been followed. Suddenly, a shrill cry cut the air. Not human. A sandbird, mechanical, forged in the temple's forge vaults. Eyes like glowing coals, wings edged in silver. Run, Kassai shouted. Ilyara drew her curved dagger, but they were already descending for temple seekers in white armor, half oracle, half warrior, their blades curved like crescent moons, their mouths sewn shut. One of them landed in front of Ilyara. She froze as the seeker raised a palm. The air rippled truth magic. A vision hit her like a wave. Flames consuming a temple. Kassai's body burning on an altar. Her hands drenched in star blood. No, she gasped, stumbling back. The seeker advanced. But Kassai slammed into him from the side, blade flashing in the sunlight. The magic snapped, and the battle began. It was chaos. Sand and fire. Searing chants. Blades singing like wind through bone. Ilyara struck low, dancing between the gaps in their formation, slashing at the enchantments glowing on their armor. She had been trained for this. Not for war, but to survive it. Kassai moved like a storm. Controlled fury. Each cut deliberate. And with every drop of blood he spilled, the serpents hissed beneath the sand, unseen, but present. Two seekers fell. The last one fled into the dunes, vanishing in a shimmer of moonlight. Afterward, they stood panting, blood on the sand. Kassai's arm bled. Ilyara pressed a cloth to the wound. "You said they wouldn't track us," she whispered. "I said they wouldn't follow this far." He looked at her. And now I was wrong. Later, as they lit a fire under the hollow arch of a red rock, Ilyara finally spoke what had been twisting in her chest since the attack. "They sent the ash-eyed general." Kassai blinked. "Who?" "General Arma. She raised me in the temple. She's one of the old blood, loyal to the chain of heaven. Then she won't stop. She doesn't know how." A pause. The fire cracked. Then Kassai said something he hadn't dared say before. "Ilyara, you saw me before we met. In a vision. Why didn't you run?" She looked up at him, tired, fierce, honest. "Because even then, I didn't want to be alone when the stars started falling." He didn't reply. But he didn't look away. And that, she realized, meant everything. From the temple heights, the moons turned again. And far in the dunes, the ash-eyed general mounted her pale horse, her orders sealed in gold. She whispered beneath her breath, "I will bring the oracle home, even if I have to drag her soul back in pieces." Chapter 5. Beneath the Forgotten Ziggurat. The desert fell away into memory. That's what it felt like as Ilyara and Kassai reached the edge of the Forgotten Ziggurat, a ruin so old that even the star priest refused to map it. Half swallowed by sand and scorched by time, it slanted sideways, its tiers crumbling into shadows. Strange stone serpents coiled around its base, mouths open in silence. "This place shouldn't exist," Ilyara whispered. Kassai didn't respond. He was staring at the topmost tier, where a broken throne once stood, now cracked clean in half, as if something had struck it from the heavens. Inside, the air was cold and dry. They passed under a collapsed lintel carved with ancient glyphs. Ilyara traced them with her fingertips. Most were ceremonial, ritual invocations, praise to the river gods, but one stood out, half scratched into the stone. The sky lied. "We wrote it over." She frowned. "This glyph, it's older than the temple. Look, someone carved over the original star script." Kassai stepped beside her. "Rewritten prophecy?" She nodded slowly. "It's not just your throne they erased. It's the truth itself." They descended deeper, into the belly of the ziggurat where a circular chamber waited, walls covered in layered mural work, flaking with age, but still bright with color in places. The center depicted two thrones, one made of starlight, one of fire and serpent coils. Above the star throne floated a symbol Ilyara knew too well, the chain of heaven constellation. But above the serpent throne, nothing. No symbol. Just space where something had been scratched away. Kassai stepped forward, breathing hard. "My father told me there was once a pact," he said. "The stars would guide the rulers, and the flame would protect the land. Two forces, not one. They made the flame a villain," Ilyara murmured. "They made it you," he said. "The oracle. The judge. The key." In the center of the room stood a stone altar, half buried beneath sand. Kassai brushed it off and revealed a circular basin, scorched black with old fire. Around its rim were 9 names, 8 scratched out. The 9th was not Kassai Tim, his full name, etched in perfect preservation. His hand hovered over it, almost afraid to touch. "They knew," he said quietly. "Even back then. They knew who I was going to be." Ilyara's voice was barely a breath. "And they buried it anyway." Suddenly, her moonstone flared against her chest. The glyphs on the wall pulsed with a faint blue glow. A low sound rose, like breath from the stone itself. The ziggurat was waking. Kassai grabbed her hand. "We need to go. Now." The chamber trembled as they ran, ancient dust falling like silver rain. Somewhere above, the serpent statues cracked open, mouths gaping in silent screams. They burst into the daylight just as the top tier collapsed, the throne falling into rubble. Behind them, the mural chamber sealed itself with a final groan of shifting rock. Buried again. But not forgotten. They didn't speak for hours as they crossed the dune field. Not until the red sun dipped low and the heat gave way to bitter wind. Finally, Kassai said, "That throne was meant for me, wasn't it?" Ilyara answered slowly. "I don't know if it's meant, but I saw you sit on it. In my vision. You were crowned and crying." He laughed bitterly. "I've never cried in my life." She turned to him. "Then maybe that's why the stars are afraid of you." They stopped at a ridge, watching the wind shift. Down below, lights twinkled along the distant river Kyra, the city of chains. a place of danger, a place of answers. Kassai leaned against a boulder, face turned to the wind. I don't want to be a king. Ilyara looked at him, tired, wounded, fierce. You don't have to want it, she said softly. But the fire chose you anyway. He turned to her then. Eyes searching. Like he wanted to say something he couldn't. Like he might break if he did. Instead, he said the only thing that mattered. If I burn, will you still stay? She stepped closer, pressed her fingers to his scarred hand. If you burn, I'll burn with you. Above them, the stars stirred. And far behind them, the ziggurat slept again, its secrets no longer silent. Chapter 6. The Ashite General. The desert was wide, but General Arama never got lost. She rode a pale sand horse draped in black silks, flanked by two silent seekers. Her eyes, one gray, one the color of crushed garnet, saw through more than heat haze. She had once been a star priest herself, but prophecy had proven too slow for her sword. Now she hunted the one oracle who had broken the chain. Her oracle, Ilyara. She dismounted at the edge of the collapsed ziggurat. Sand swirled in eddies where fire once burned. The air still tasted of old stone and serpent ash. Arama crouched, pressing her gloved fingers to the earth. Warm. Recently disturbed. Too recent, she murmured. One of the seekers opened a map. Another unrolled a scroll bearing the oracle's seal, pulsing with fading light. She was here, Arama said. Then her gaze shifted toward the east, where the dunes dipped low and a faint shimmer marked the distant lights of Cairo. She's heading for the city of thieves. She stood slowly, dusting off her long black coat, where 9 silver rings hung at her belt, each etched with a symbol of someone she'd killed. One space remained. Empty. She stared at it. Ilyara, you don't know what you're carrying. She turned to her men. Double pace. We catch them before the gates close. Ilyara had never seen a city like it. Built on 3 levels, Cairo rose from the edge of the great river like a fortress made of salt, glass, and bronze. The lower levels swarmed with smoke, music, and whispers. Rope bridges crossed impossible heights. Fires flickered in hanging cauldrons strung between rooftops. Somewhere, a horn blew low and long. Kassai lowered his hood as they passed through the outer market. He was watching every rooftop. So was she. Safe here? She asked. As safe as a serpent in a lion den, he muttered. They moved through stalls selling star silk, ink-bone charms, and spice-soaked scrolls. Cairo was a city of outcasts, people who'd fled the sky temples and fire palaces alike. If anyone still knew the true story of the Serpent Throne, this was where they'd find it. They met her contact in the back room of a tea house carved into the side of a cliff, an older woman named Yama, who once carried secrets for the temple before they branded her a heretic. She poured them black flower tea and stared long at Kassai. I remember that sigil, she said. From before the temples claimed the stars. The old throne had 2 heirs once. One died in the fire. The other, her eyes narrowed, was supposed to be a girl. Kassai frowned. Ilyara blinked. A girl. Yama nodded. The fire was passed through twins, once. The prophecy was split. One to guard the serpent flame. One to unleash it. But the temple destroyed all record of it. Said the chain must be unbroken. She looked at Ilyara then, and smiled sadly. Maybe you were never meant to witness the future. Maybe you were meant to start it. They left in silence. Outside, Cairo burned in light, torches strung like stars, shadow dancers twirling between alleys, prayers thrown like coins into river fountains. But Ilyara couldn't stop shaking. She leaned against a pillar beneath a hanging lantern, her fingers tight around the moonstone under her collar. Kassai stepped close. You all right? She nodded slowly. No, she said. I don't think I've been all right since the moment I saw you in my vision. He watched her for a long moment, then finally said what he'd been holding back. If you were sent to stop me, Ilyara, why didn't you run when you had the chance? She looked up at him, and her voice was steady now. Because even the stars deserve a choice. From across the rooftops, Arama watched them. Silent. Still. She pressed a finger to her lips and vanished into shadow. Chapter 7. The Mask Cracks. The night wind in Cairo was thick with smoke and song. From the rooftop gardens to the shadowed alleys, the city never truly slept. Drums echoed somewhere near the salt docks. Perfumed incense drifted from floating lanterns. And somewhere in the distance, lovers whispered over wine while rebels plotted war beneath gold-curtained tents. But in a small stone chamber overlooking the river, Ilyara sat alone, watching the moon's reflection ripple. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. The stars outside were shifting too fast, too wrong. Something was happening above, in the sky's hidden architecture. The chain of heaven, it wasn't holding. And neither was she. Kassai stood just beyond the door, arms crossed, his silhouette cast in firelight. He was staring at the curved blade he'd carried since she met him. Not examining it, just holding it, as if it helped him remember who he was. "You didn't tell me the flame comes with a price," she said softly. He didn't turn. "It always does. It reacts to blood. To pain," he corrected. "The serpents rise when I bleed or rage. It's not a blessing, Ilyara. It's a warning." She rose, walked slowly toward him. "What happened to your brothers?" He flinched, just slightly. "They died," he said. "But not in battle?" "No." He turned now, and the look in his eyes was darker than she'd ever seen it. "They were sacrificed. By the very priest who claimed we carried impurity in our blood. Too much fire. Too little obedience. The temples feared us. So they slit their throats in a sealed chamber and called it mercy." Ilyara's breath caught. "They did it in your name." He nodded once. "I was 8. I watched." She moved closer. Put a hand gently to his chest. "Over the mark burned there. The sigil of the Serpent Kings. And yet you still wear it. Because forgetting would be worse." There was a long pause. Then she asked the question she'd never dared before. "Who are you really, Kassai?" His lips parted, and the mask cracked. Just enough for her to see the boy underneath the flame. "I'm no king. No savior. I don't want a throne. I want to tear it down and bury the ashes. But," he said, quieter now, "I don't know if I'll survive doing it." She swallowed hard. "You will." He met her eyes. "I'm not sure I want to." The silence between them wasn't cold this time. It was heat. Slow, aching heat. Their hands brushed. And it was deliberate. "Ilyara," he murmured, "when you saw me in your vision, what was I doing?" She didn't lie. "You were standing in fire. And crying." He gave a bitter smile. "That doesn't sound like a hero." "No," she said. "But it does sound like a man still trying to choose." Their faces were close now. Not in passion. Not yet. But in something heavier, recognition. He cupped her jaw gently, thumb brushing beneath her lip. "I can't promise I'll make the right choice." She leaned into his hand. "You already made one," she whispered. "You saved me." Their lips almost touched. Almost. But then, a whistle in the distance. Low. Sharp. Kassai froze. "That's not a night signal." He rushed to the window and looked down. A dark figure moved through the crowd below, slow, composed, gliding like a black flame. Her cloak bore 9 silver rings. One was empty. "General Arma." "She's here," Ilyara breathed. Kassai grabbed her hand. "No more running." They vanished through the upper alleyway just as Arama stepped into the courtyard below, her eyes scanning the shadows like a panther. She looked up at the balcony, exactly where they'd been standing, and smiled. "You can run, little moon," she whispered. "But I'm the night that never leaves you." Chapter 8. The City of Chains. Kyra's streets were woven like lies, tight, overlapping, never leading where they first promised. In the golden light of day, they were alive with color. Spice merchants shouting over jasmine carts, fortune charm hawkers rattling gold-threaded bracelets, painted dancers spinning beneath silken canopies. But at night, Kyra belonged to the forgotten. And that was exactly where Kassai led them. Ilyara followed him through winding alleys of chipped black tile and crumbling sandstone, past taverns lit with red oil lamps and courtyards echoing with strange music. Everything smelled of cardamom, sweat, and ash. She clutched her moonstone tight beneath her tunic. The stars were hidden tonight, veiled by low cloud and rising smoke. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "To the lower ring," Kassai muttered. "Where the chain doesn't reach." They passed under an arch carved with serpent runes, almost completely erased. Just beyond it, a man leaned against the wall, eyes marked with soot in the old rebel pattern. He tilted his chin. No words were exchanged. Just recognition. They descended into a hidden atrium beneath an abandoned bathhouse. Fires burned low in clay pits. Dozens of people turned their heads as Kassai entered, some with awe, others with suspicion, a few with something close to fear. Ilyara realized they weren't just refugees or rebels. They were fire-blooded. Every person here bore a mark, an ember-bright sigil on the wrist, or a glyph beneath the eye, glowing faintly in the dark. And they were watching her. Because she did not bear a flame. Only a name. Oracle. And that wasn't always a good thing down here. A tall woman stepped forward from the crowd. She wore a crimson shawl and carried a dagger at each hip. Her hair was shorn close to her scalp, and her left hand was missing 3 fingers, burn scars etched up to the elbow. "Kassai," she said, voice sharp. "You brought the chain's daughter into my den?" "She broke the chain," he replied. "And we need your help." The woman's eyes flicked to Ilyara. "Does she speak?" Ilyara stepped forward, lifting her chin. "I'm not here as a priestess. I'm here because I saw a vision of this city burning." The woman raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think we care about your visions?" "Because in it," Ilyara said, "you died first." That got their attention. The crowd stirred. The woman stared at her, then gave a dry laugh and waved them forward. "Come, then, Dreamwalker. Show me what fate you've come to rewrite." They sat around a cracked marble table in the heart of the Lower Ring's rebel sanctum. The woman introduced herself as Maare, once a royal flame watcher under the Serpent Throne, now leader of the Ash Breath rebels. Ilyara told them everything. The vision, the sealed ziggurat, the rewritten glyphs, the chain of heaven unraveling in the sky. And the general, Kassai added. "She's here." "Arama." Maare cursed softly. "Then we're out of time. If Arama's here, the chain's full grip isn't far behind." One of the younger rebels leaned in. "There's an old legend," he whispered. "Says if the stars ever fall out of step with the chain, the Serpent King will rise again, and the oracle will either free him or bind him forever." Everyone looked at Ilyara. She held her breath and said nothing, because she didn't know which one she was. Later, Ilyara wandered away from the fire pits. She stepped into a quiet alcove of stone and cracked tile, lit only by flickering firelight. Kassai found her there, staring at her reflection in a chipped bronze mirror. "They think I'm going to chain you," she said. He leaned against the wall. "And are they wrong?" She turned. "I don't want to chain anything. I want to change it." His eyes softened. "You sound like someone who still believes in something." "I believe in what I saw," she said. "And in the choice I'm going to make." She stepped closer. "I believe in you." He stared at her. And for the first time, the storm behind his eyes quieted. He touched her cheek, hesitantly, like she might vanish if he dared to feel too much. "You shouldn't," he said. "I know." Their foreheads touched. A breath between them. But the moment shattered with a scream from the corridor. They both turned, blades drawn. And a rebel burst through the entrance, panting. "She's here." "Arama." "The chain is in the upper city. They've locked down the northern gates." Maare appeared behind him, eyes blazing. "They're not here to capture. They're here to burn us out." Kassai's voice dropped like a stone into the silence. "Then we set the fire first." Across every empire, every forgotten age, stories still whisper. If this tale stirred your spirit, leave a like to honor the echoes of the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice weaves a new legend into the sands of time. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Historical Fantasy Stories, where myths walk beside history, and every discovery changes the world. The next forgotten legend is waiting to be found.